In Southwark, we do not have a local authority caterer. We also do not have a single school contract for all of our schools. Each of our schools have the autonomy to individually procure or choose to have their catering service in-house. Southwark Council are fortunate to have had the support of Impact on Urban Health, working in partnership with us on a programme, the School Meals Transformation Programme, which commenced in 2021. We realised through the programme there is a need for more oversight from the local authority and more support of school business managers. One of the large pieces of work was to think about how we can support schools who are individually procuring outsourced catering services from a local authority's perspective. Very fortunately, we noticed early on in our project that a couple of our schools were using a service provided by the Department for Education called Get Help Buying for Schools. We spotted an opportunity to work in partnership with them to see what Get Help Buying for Schools could do to support at a local authority level. So we've developed our framework agreement in partnership with Get Help Buying for Schools. Now, very much so that council set the specification, the contract requirements, and thought about what monitoring would be in that framework at framework level and at call-off level. So we've had very much control over that. But what Get Help Buying for Schools has helped us do is to tender that framework award.
So we have a council and catering company. They deliver a school catering service for us. I think around 2/3 of schools use it. They pay London Living Wage. They provide a really high quality service. Part of that work that we do is about supporting schools and taking a whole school approach. So the school food is one part of this, and making sure that as many children as possible have access to like a good quality school meal is really important. But so is kind of access to inspiring food education and kind of that understanding the role and value of school food. You know, I suppose as we kind of move forward with the wider food strategy in the borough, having that arrangement just makes more and more sense.
The first thing when it comes to procurement and schools in Newham that we think about is the fact that schools are ultimately the buyer, and we need to work with them, we need to support them so that they know both the opportunities and the responsibilities they have when they're procuring a school meals provider. In Newham, Eat for Free is the longest standing universal meal scheme in the country, and every borough in London now has a universal primary meal scheme and has the opportunity to attach to that scheme grant conditions and grant principles. And those grant conditions can include an ask such as using the London circular procurement tools and asking all caterers to engage with those.
Pupil voice has been a real focus of our service specification. Getting kids to choose healthy meals that are appealing to them can be a real challenge. And in Southwark, which is such a diverse borough, giving our pupils a voice in what they eat and allowing them to suggest some of the recipes they might eat in their community at home, it just really adds to the richness of our school food menus and keep a two-way conversation between the customer and the caterer. So we've required that in our contract, that there's a focus on consultation with pupils and taking pupils' feedback into account when designing menus.
Look, for schools, it's about getting somebody that's accountable, isn't it? If you work with a local authority caterer, if you work with somebody local, there is that intense accountability. We all feel differently about where we live, don't we? We all feel differently about the things we do on our own doorstep. And there's an obvious reality to that. If you're calling up a head office that is 15 minutes down the road, there is that fantastic connection, that accountability, that knowledge of place. For students, it's about meals that are tailored to their needs. It's about a caterer that is well set up to deal with the things that matter to your community, your student. Newham is a very diverse place, and understanding that and knowing how to build inclusive menus. If you have a workforce that is well paid on London Living Wage and above, a workforce that is on good pensions, a workforce that has been together and well looked after for a long time, those things are things worth valuing.
We agreed to become the 5th signatory of the London Food Purchasing Commitment, which really looks at big improvements and big reductions in the carbon emissions related to school food service, related to reductions in food waste. And again, we're meeting regularly to work out different approaches, different projects, and to make sure that we're collecting the data as we need to.
Through the promotion of a good food culture within the school context, you really promote an understanding of why that's important, and just generally speaking about food in like a more kind of like positive way, and demonstrating how it influences positive, say, behavior within the classroom as well. So yeah, it goes without saying that there's so many benefits to understanding and celebrating good food in schools.
If you're a local authority that has already allowed schools to oversee their own procurement, you'll have lots of different caterers operating in your borough at different contract price points. This framework agreement is quite a good model for bringing people back onto a local authority oversight situation, because schools can join the framework when their contracts come to an end. Southwark Council have proved there is a bit of a market for this in London at a borough level. So perhaps is there a framework agreement for London that we could consider, where we all come together and bring together our respective buying power?
I mean, I think the first thing is to see whether or not your local authority has a food partnership already. If we want to make changes, and if we want to make changes in difficult circumstances, particularly, then we need to work together and we need to kind of coordinate responses. The thing that's really useful is having frameworks and having things written down that you can always come back to, because someone can be really committed to this and then they move on, whether or not it's in a school or it's in your catering provider. Those things can change. So having frameworks, having, whether it's an action plan, whether it's being part of the food purchasing commitment, being able to always come back to something and saying, like, we agreed that this is what we're working on. Things will change and things will move if we kind of keep having the conversations.
What advice would you give to other boroughs? The first thing I would say to you is the option to include grant condition and grant principles is open to every borough in London. The meal's in the middle of the day, but it's just at the middle of a whole school approach. And getting everything right across your school, from breakfast club to after school club, they all fall under the school food standards. They all fall under head teachers and governors' responsibilities. And then within that, the opportunities for food education. If you're not engaged with Veg Power, if you're not engaged with Pro Veg, if you're not engaged with all of the wonderful programs like School Food Matters, Nourish, get engaged, make it everything it can be with your support as a council, with your support as a public health team. It takes a very small amount of money, matched alongside, just a little bit of match alongside that money that pays for the meals, to really get a lot out of it.